Alafia, I'm Dr. Gloria Latimore-Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O show. I am here to discuss with my very capable guests the subject, MotherWit, what shall we tell our daughters? We are here, we have all of our various titles. I have attorney Marian Perkins-Phillips. I have Dr. Asantewaa Oppong Wadie, and I am Dr. Gloria Latimore-Peace. But we're here in the capacity of mothers. We're here in the capacity of sisters, women who care for the well-being of our own daughters, sisters, mothers, aunts, nieces, whatever the relationship is. And I just want to say, do a little adjusting here, and that is that from our point of view, the point of view we will take, the perspective we will take, is that this is not all about biology. Your daughter does not need to be your biological child, because in our community as Africans, the daughters of the village were the daughters of the village, and even though they have biological parents and can trace their biological parents, other people in the community also took an interest in them. In fact, we brought that with us when we came, and we practiced it more in the rural South than we tend to do in the urban areas, because if you did something that was not appropriate in any other place but home, you were disciplined right where you were. And then the news would get home before you did, and when you got home, you would be disciplined again. So we understand the concept of parenting. We understand the concept of it takes a whole village. And we understand that the daughters to whom we are referring are our daughters, whether they live under our roofs or not. We agree?
Yes.
Okay. So now that we have shown you that we are in agreement and that we are here as mothers, we want to take up a little bit, I don't know how much, of this thing that is currently called domestic abuse, domestic violence, hate crimes against women, and we want to follow it to its root. We want to see how we get that started, not how just how it expresses itself when some woman is violated by some other person. So who wants to start? Who wants to weigh in here? I think I'm looking at Asantewaa, so I'm looking at her as though she's going to be the one.
Yeah. Dr. Peace, that subject is deeply troubling to me, particularly with the images that we've seen on television during the past weeks of, black women, women who could be our sisters, our daughters, our friends, being very badly abused, to the sight of the world, and of course, like you said, that comes this long. It has a very long root. This whole idea that women are undervalued, and in particular, black women, has its origins even before the founding of this nation that we currently live in. This whole idea that we could go and take people, that Americans, Europeans could go and take people and make of those people property and do with those people what they want, of course, contaminated our community. It has transferred. It has lived since that time. We have not healed the rift that was created during this very unfortunate period that we call enslavement. We have not healed it. And the willingness of women to put themselves in places where they know their safety is compromised is also stemming from that. You know, I can be objectified. That's okay. You know, money, I have clout, I'm in a good network, you know, despite the fact that I'm feeling pain. You know, so there's, for me, what I see is a long story. A story that suggests that the healing process definitely needs to happen, and we need to look candidly at, you know, where this all started, from this idea that you're property and this idea that you're an object.
Yes,
Very good opening, isn't it?
it is.
That's exactly where I knew you would go.
Exactly, because that's exactly where I want us to go as well, that women and children actually under the legal system were treated as property, as chattel. That was the word that was used at common law. And when we're talking about just the American system, we can't help but also bring in the role not only of the law, not only of culture, but of religion. So when we start talking about historically in terms of how women have been treated, because it is embedded many times in a religious perspective, it is quite difficult for both the man and the women to deal with in terms of how their role should be, because to some extent people how they have interpreted the religion certainly has basically, I'll be frank, not correct, because religion is supposed to make a situation holistic, not a hierarchy that could possibly lead to one person feeling that they are better than another. So I agree, yes, with my sister in terms of women being undervalued, devalued, pursuant to the religion, under the law, and in the culture. And it stems it's very, very deeply rooted, very, very deeply rooted, even before the beginning of America. So it is something that's taking a long time to educate everyone about. Domestic violence, intimate partner violence is a global problem. It is a global problem, and it is rooted in the culture, in the religion, and to some extent, many people feel that the laws are for everything except what goes on in their family and behind closed doors. And so since many people feel like that around the globe, they're feeling that what they're doing behind closed doors and with their spouse or with their girlfriend or with their child is actually permissible.
Well, here we have, we've unearthed two at least, perhaps three roots. One is servants, obey thy masters. Mm-hmm. The other one is wives, obey thy husband. Mm-hmm. And the third one that came out when you talked about women treated as girls, that women are never really adults. Mm-hmm. You know, we never fully mature. Mm-hmm. Children, obey your parents. Mm-hmm. So now you take those and you add to them, or you couch them in this notion that you are an object, that you are not a person, mm-hmm. that you are someone's property. And we know how far, and when you point out that this is a global thing, we know from study of not just black history, but other history, we know that women could be killed and the husbands would not be punished, mm-hmm. because the woman was the property of her husband. And so if he beat her, if he killed her, and this went on in Europe in, I guess, their dark ages. Mm-hmm. So let me say this before we return, because this is kind of a triage we're doing here. Mm-hmm. As you say, it's deeply troubling, and so you want to run right in and do something. But first of all, you have to analyze what it is that you need to do. So let me say that the whole notion of this individual man who beats this individual woman is not this isolated incident as we are saying. Mm-hmm. That when you traced it back to its root in chattel slavery, when we saw that people who have as a part of their culture, as a part of their worldview, that they are entitled to take people as property to be bought and sold like cattle or furniture. That has to be the beginning. Nothing could have preceded that except the worldview, and the worldview which entitled you to think that way and therefore to behave that way. And so consequently, there has been centuries of this before it got to where we are now. The point that you made about women, which of you made the point about women putting themselves into harm's way as though, that's you? Mm-hmm. As though they don't matter, they have no value. You want to elaborate there?
Definitely. One of the things that happens in a society that is based on individualism is the breaking up of the coalition of females that is absolutely necessary for the safety and for the evolution of women. And so you will actually get women, especially childbearing years, pitted against each other, like I'm prettier, I can attract more men than she can, or, just for all kinds of reasons. She has better hair, just silly, superficial reasons. Against each other, and therefore we never kind of build up women's wisdom, this kind of immediate insight that a woman needs to carry, that recognize when you are putting yourself in a place where your safety is compromised, because that is the only advantage you have over someone who is physically stronger than you, is that you recognize danger and you move away. And we never get to really build that wisdom up, because of how the society is designed, that pits women against each other and keeps women competing with each other, especially for male attention. So I really see where women can be stronger and avoid, a male who isn't evolved enough to know that he shouldn't beat on you. Avoid it, by building up your own inner MotherWit, your own inner wisdom. And that comes from speaking and talking to other women.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying there needs to be cooperation among women, that women need opportunities to be together, that first of all, know thyself and love thyself, But how are we to find value in ourselves in a culture which, as Marian has pointed out, devalues women?
Well, the first thing, we have had some progress. So because things are not as bad as they were, we know that coalition building and movements have changed laws, and to some extent movements have changed perceptions. So when we talk about Ralph Ellison writing the book The Invisible Man, and so at one point, seriously, African Americans were invisible. To some extent, women were invisible. They couldn't vote until 1920, could not have credit in their own name. In certain countries, certainly in America, all women can drive. We know that in Saudi Arabia, women still cannot drive. We know about the Pakistani woman who had almost acid or something put in her face for talking about that the Pakistani girl should go to school. And so we have to applaud individuals who stand up, and certainly the coalition. I definitely agree with the doctor that it's important to have the support, and that is why many times people don't do certain things. The other thing too is that it's important for the men to have support in terms of how to be a man and to really realize that to be a good man is actually not a man who beats a woman, that a good man doesn't call a woman out of her name. So there has to be that coalition of men to boys to men when we talk about that group that really, really can be helpful. Because to some extent we're talking about the psyche. You talk about our outer selves, when the reality is who we really are is our inner selves, our psyche. So who we feel that we are on the inside. So we may have a manifestation for the outside, for the sociological part of society, but who we are on the inside is really how we react to different situations. So I did feel, and I'm just looking at the photographs, and I'm not a psychologist, with Ray Rice's wife. Just every time, all the pictures that we saw her, she had her head down. She looked sad, and it wasn't just to have her head down away from the media. She was just sad. Her body movement was one of shoulders down. She was not a woman who was feeling of self-esteem. And then for Ray Rice, punishment has come to some extent. He himself is actually kind of feeling alone as well. So I'm just saying that the men need support and the women need support regarding the particular situation, and it needs to, and it does make a difference. Positive situations can make a difference. People are talking about the music and says, well, it doesn't really make a difference. Well, I'll say, well, in our day, we listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire, and they saying you're a superstar no matter who you are. Well, believe it or not, I believed it. It sounds very corny, and so be careful in thinking that it doesn't matter. It really does make a difference. So to hear the music over and over again, a person is a beat or whatever, it does begin to affect the psyche, and the person internalizes that. So the point that I'm making is that the women need support and the men need support. This particular model of individualism is not a workable model or paradigm. And that takes us all the way. It's going to be very controversial, going all the way to looking at the economic situation. That to have just total dog-eat-dog, who is going to do, the race to the top without making sure that society has some type of agreed upon safety net is a situation that can be quite volatile. And the United States, as we speak right now, has one of the widest gaps between the haves and the have-nots the United States has ever seen. And so we are dealing with a quite stressful situation in many ways, which kind of also contributes to domestic violence.
I taught courses in child development when I was at Northeastern Illinois University. And one of the things that I did was research on child abuse. Mm-hmm. And I discovered, much to my amazement, that the profile of the child abuser was white, married, Christian, middle class, which was amazing because the poster child for child abuse is always going to be somebody who is in a single family, single parent situation. Those are the children who are the ones getting abused. They're always going to be poverty stricken. They're usually going to be some minority, quote, quote, and I don't like the term, but you know what I'm saying. But they're not going to be related to any religion. They're not going to. This is the poster child. But then when you do actually look at the research, then you find out that it isn't us who is practicing most of the child abuse. But in a culture that is steeped in misogyny, then you know that who you are, inside and outside, is not without the cultural influence of this hatred of women. Call it what it is. These are hate crimes. To call it domestic abuse waters that down. These are crimes of hate and contempt. Now, who is programming our young men that they should have such contempt for their counterparts, their female counterparts, that they should have such contempt that they should write lyrics that demean their female counterparts? Who is fueling that? Who is training people to be angry, but not at people who oppress them, but rather at other people who are objects of the same oppression? Both the males and the females in the black community are equally oppressed by the same oppression. But yet, a man can come home from work and blame how he's feeling on the woman who is home doing nothing more but trying to maintain a household. So to this transfer of this anger, first of all, this embedding, inculcating of this self-hate, we have to deal with that. Where do we get this contempt for ourselves?
Well, I hope I'm able to fully express this idea. One of the things I found when I was doing my research during graduate school was I was interviewing Marian, and he told me, he said, when someone tells you their creation story, they are telling you who they are. So a creation story is not meant ever to just tell you about the beginning of the world. A person is really saying, this is my orientation to reality. This is what you should expect of me. So right away when you open the first book of the Bible, you find a story where women are actually subordinate. They are an afterthought in God's mind. And this is setting this whole thing up for women being an afterthought, non-seriously taken. They are, I'll think about it when I have to. You need a companion? Oh, okay, I can like harness somebody from your ribs, you know, which is a story that is told there in Genesis, that, you know, God put him to sleep and he took out a rib and made this female strictly as a friend and a companion, someone to hang out with,
Right,
you
correct.
know, and definitely not value adding in any serious way. And this is not just a story. This is showing you the European psyche, kind of showing you what to expect of them, how they will design a society. Now, we're coming from a society that had mother value, not in every single instance, but overall, mostly. This was the finding of Cheikh Anta Diop in the Cultural Unity of Africa, that it's mostly matriarchal, it's mostly matrifocal. And then you come into this society and you are necessarily contaminated because you come in as an object and not a subject that can change reality to be more favorable to you, right? And you don't even realize that you are carrying this contamination. And then it is further fueled by an industry that is called entertainment industry, you know, that suggests that you have to write things in a way that please our primary demographic, which are white males starting at the age 18 to 25. You have to please them. And those lyrics are pleasing to somebody. It's definitely not pleasing to the people hearing it who are on the losing end of it, but they do please somebody. Somebody is okay.
And somebody
hearing-
is making money off of it. I totally agree with you. And then there are choices that are made in terms of what music is going to get the contract. I think all of us know great musicians, and we can hear them underground, or we can hear them in our basements of our homes, and yet we're saying that person should have a contract. And yet we know that there are decision makers. So there are some chess moves being made on the business end, on the economics end, in terms of the music that is being played. But I do want to commend those people who have started the independent labels. I certainly agree with all of that. But then when they find themselves, well, the best way that they can make the money is to say certain words or this and that. It's something that they have to think deep and hard within their soul in terms of how far should they go to make that particular money and things like that. So it's a very, very difficult situation. We've heard some of the artists like LL Cool J, I remember him saying something like he had to do a second thinking because his grandmother had said something about some of the language he was using. He said, "Okay, Grandma, I'm gonna change." And so he thought about a mother figure who impacted him. And so, not to say that some of the others don't have that, but it depends on different degrees. The other thing too, for the system to set it up that everybody's economic needs are not sustained at a certain level so that they can maintain dignity. It's almost like everybody is fighting to grab that almighty dollar, and what are they going to do? Is the woman going to sell her body? Is the person going to sell out their mother? And so people should not be in those particular situations, but some people are in very, 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 very difficult situations. But regarding both Ray Rice and even the other young man who's been accused with child abuse, they both have money, but we don't know the inside of them and in terms of what they are going on with, what's going on with them. And so even despite the money, that is not the absolute be-all. It is how they are feeling about themselves psychologically, which is contributing to it's manifests itself in the actions that they have done. Because no matter how angry someone could be, and this is even if someone has hit you, you almost want to ask them first, why are you doing this, particularly if you're in a relationship. So the point that I'm making is the psyche has been damaged, and also the psyche of the people who believe that they have the upper hand, their psyche is damaged as well. So the Caucasian young white male who's looking at the rap music and the objectification of women, primarily African American women, his psyche is damaged as well.
I want to pick up this strain. I want to go back to the beginning, the creation story, because the afterthought, the woman as afterthought, the woman as provided for the comfort of the man. The woman who was stupid, the woman who did not know any better than to violate the law that had been given to them. So when the serpent, now this is their story, not ours, because we don't do serpents like that in African mythology. But when the serpent appears, she doesn't think twice about violating the law with another species even. I mean, this woman is incredibly dumb because she doesn't know any better. Here, this childlike mind, this immature person who does this great damage that she violates, not only violates the law herself, but then she goes and influences the man to violate the law as well and get them both evicted from paradise. Now, Pandora's box repeats the very same story.
Yes, it does.
Everything was fine until Pandora's curiosity led her to open up the box and let out the worries in the world. There are so many stories like that. In Works and Days, they talk about, not about women and men procreating together, but about men coming together with flesh and bone. I mean, women just don't even get any recognition. This is very old literature, Hesiod, very old literature. So you find it not only in theological literature, but you find it in mythology, you find it everywhere you look. And then the Iceman's inheritance, for me, just put the icing on the cake. Because here were men who feared women because they had a cycle and they bore children. They did not understand them. They did not recognize them as their female counterparts. They saw them as something alien to be feared. You see it in Greek myths all the time, where the god is always thinking that the goddess and his offspring are conspiring to take away his control or take away his crown, his throne. So we've got really bad press when you talk about the stories. We've got really bad press. So many stories about the female gender are told that they obviously become a part of that psyche you're talking about, Marian.
Yes.
So here are children who are growing up. We're sending our children off to school. We're not examining even the fairy tales to see what.
Right.
You know, we need to do character analysis on everything that comes close to where our children's minds are being engaged. I went to see a movie. A friend of mine said, go see this movie. You'll love this movie. I went to see the movie. I said, I want a refund. She said, you didn't like the movie? I said, wait a minute. Here you have the black male character as a sociopath. The other black male is unfaithful to his wife. The woman is so dumb that she puts herself, as you said, she makes herself vulnerable to a sociopath. She gets right at home. She doesn't sense any danger in what she's doing. She puts not only herself, but she puts her children at risk. And in the midst of this, thrown in for good measure, you have a woman who, in fact, appears to lust after the stranger who is about to take out everything in that household. So what I'm saying is we don't do character analysis. Who is in this story? What is this image representing? Is that an image that you want to see?
Right.
Do you want your children to regard themselves, their fathers, their brothers, as these villains? Do you want to see icons in your community devalued and desecrated? Do you want to see Big Mama, the icon in the black community, represented by a male?
Yes.
Let us talk about these things.
Yes. It is almost as though we have to rewrite the entire script of everything.
Yes.
Right? And with the serious intent to act as if we know that what we are doing is actually shaping and touching lives. Like you said, songs are shaping us, stories are shaping, everything we come in contact with is shaping us.
That's right.
And so there's like this creation story that comes out of the Ifa tradition from Nigeria that says that God sent all these men to the world to build up the world and create the earth, and he sent one woman. And all of them was like, oh, she's so young, she's not serious, and they got busy creating the earth and, you know, measuring, da-da-da. They kept trying to put it together, and it wasn't coming together. So they went back to Latimore-Peace and said, what's wrong? And he says to them, have you consulted the female? And they're like, oh, why do we have to? You know, she's no big deal. And he was like, oh, well, that's where you're wrong. Until you do so, your plans won't work. So we literally have to go back and get the stories that remind, females and males about the importance of how females should be treated, their significance to reality, what they bring inherently. Not, you know, like, oh, she's achieved all this. No, just inherent, just being female. What is my value, right? Starting from the very beginning. And then just do away with. I mean, I heard Ben Levy say, he had a teacher that opened the window and just threw out all the books. That's kind of what we got to do. Just do away with.
Right, but I want to add, at one point we were making progress, but as Frederick Douglass says, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And so when we talk about history, Sankofa, we have to know our past in order to predict what the future will do. And so it is imperative. We think that we're free, but we have begun to stop being eternally vigilant, and as a result, it is having a big effect in many areas. We're getting ready to relitigate the Voting Rights Act, voter suppression. We've been knowing for quite a while in terms of what has been happening in terms of police shootings of African Americans, unarmed African Americans, and we are dealing with situations that have played out in our society, but because we as a community have not been eternally vigilant, maybe thinking that freedom is actually, oh, we're so happy, but in order to continue to stay free, we must be vigilant, and that part of that vigilance is certainly, as you're saying, staying steeped in the history. And there are times where history ebbs and flows. There are times when we have that memory. We don't ever forget. Each of us has someone who has put it inside of us. So I do want to say this, that I'm hopeful, because I do believe that in each and every one of us, someone has placed that seed of memory. So that's the one thing that I do want to say. But the other part that I want to say is that the people who do have the history do need to come together, feed off of each other, and certainly be willing to share. Because I've actually spoken to some younger people who they've said, wow, you've told me this, I appreciate it. Oh, I wish my mom had told me that. And so we should never have, the kind of the generation gap that we do have today, where the knowledge is not being transferred. Because the knowledge is basically saying, we want to protect you and make you stronger. We don't want to leave you alone. We don't want to leave Ray Rice's wife alone, the little children, anybody. We do not want to leave them alone. The other point I'd like to add on, Dr. Peace, when you were talking about the profile, domestic violence, sexual assault, and child neglect is about power and control, and generally the victim is able to be silent or to be silenced. So when you talk about that, disproportionately the offenders are going to be people in the predominant culture, it is the people who have the power and control are able to, for the most part, get away with it. When you think about the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, people talk about murder, gun cases, theft cases. Not to say that those cases are not important, they are. But domestic violence, those are cases that should be prosecuted. In Detroit, Kim Worthy, who was an African-American prosecutor, she found loads and loads of sexual assault kits just put in a closet, not tested, and that the feeling was that, well, most of the victims are young African-American females from Detroit. We think some of them were walking the street. It doesn't really matter. Any of them, if they've made a complaint, it needs to be investigated. But just to take the kit and just put it in the closet, well, she took those kits and they still tested them, and they were able to still, even after many years went past, and many meaning more than 7, more than 10, to still try to deal with prosecuting the wrongdoers. So the wrongdoers are like, we've got the power and control. The legal system is not going to do anything, and the victim is silenced. And given that most of the victims are women and girls, they're silenced.
You just make me think of so many things at the same time that I'm listening to you. My daughter brought up an aspect of this thing about, you say, women being silent and silenced. She said very often women don't report the men who have violated them because they are afraid for the other men in their families that they love. For example, if they tell their father who this person was that the family knows, the father is going to be in trouble because the father is going to kill this person.
Right.
Or the brother is going to go to jail because the brother is going to seek out this person. Or worse still, they are going to be killed themselves because this person who has done this is already poised to defend himself. So you have that other aspect where the victim is silent, caged bird. Maya Angelou said she didn't speak for years after she told her uncles she had been violated. They went and killed the man immediately. And then she thought she caused someone else's death, and she thought words from her mouth had caused this, and so she was left mute by that situation. So the thing is, we have to do preventive. We can't wait until after the assault has taken place, the violation has taken place. Then we assess penalties. Then we assess who can allot penalties, because, you know, we have to see what the organization is going to say about what this person did to this other person. The organization was not harmed in any way with this brutal assault. They didn't feel any pain, but they're feeling pain in the pocketbook with the withdrawal of sponsors. So now we have to wait to see what the organization, what penalty they're going to assess. That doesn't make those people whole. The fact that, in fact, it undermines them, because now the means of supporting this couple is being taken away, and they're going to have another set of problems, whether they decide to reconcile or not. So the thing is that we have to go in there, as Dr. Burroughs said in What Shall I Tell My Children? We have to arm our children with the truth. So that they can be truly free. We have to tell them this is a patrilineal society. It is ruled by men and the values of men. We have to tell them that misogyny abounds, that macho behavior abounds, that men are rewarded greatly for being macho, for being devoid of feeling and emotion. We have to tell our daughters that this is the environment in which they are growing up. We have to also tell them about the rich past and present that we continuously experience in the talents and genius of our own people that gets obfuscated so that it doesn't come to light often enough. So that we have to arm them. We have to give them cultural armor, that they will value themselves, that they will see danger. They will see, very often the analogy is made that any hint of a insult against people of the Jewish faith, any hint is met head on. You know, you don't play the dozens with them. You know, you don't say subtle stuff. Everything is regarded as trespassing on their image and on their personhood. We got to get sensitive. We have to be sensitive. I am valuable, not just because I am a female and I can give birth, but because if one gender could do it all, there wouldn't be two.
That's right.
So obviously there is a reason. I have a reason for being in the world. and you really don't want to see me bust to the moon, because you really don't want to see what kind of world, you know, I don't care what James Brown said about it being a man's world. As you pointed out in the story, the Ifa story, man couldn't even put the world together.
And James Brown did say it would be nothing without a woman
He
or a
did
girl,
say it would
so.
be nothing, but then he proceeded to give men credit for everything
Yes,
thereafter.
yes.
You know, so you don't really know what women contributed to it when you get through to the end of the song. But the important thing, you know, women have antenna that go out.
That's right.
What happened to that mother's instinct, that intuition?
Spirit of discernment.
You know, anytime you can destroy or dilute that, you have seriously violated a woman.
Right.
Anytime a woman will not kill you on behalf of her children, you know, anytime you get a female that will allow you to get away with abusing her young, that's unnatural.
That's right.
So we should see certain kinds of behavior. We should begin to send that antenna out and no, this doesn't add up.
Right. That's right.
This is unnatural.
Exactly.
Right.
This is not, a woman will lay down her life for her young. That's all there is to it. Will not allow them to be violated. Will not allow you to look in their direction with the wrong expression. What do we have now that women can do other than that? We have some of that. What do we have of men who can do other than protect their young?
That's right.
We have some of that. We've got to take them, as Dr. Burroughs said, we got to take them into a way back time
That's right.
of kings and queens who ruled the Nile and discovered the laws. People say, I don't want to hear that black history. I don't want to hear that black stuff. Your survival is dependent upon your knowing who you are.
That's right.
If you don't know who you are, then you can in no wise protect yourself, care for yourself, look out for your own interests. You are simply chattel, even if you don't have chains.
That's right. I agree.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah. There's a lot there. You know, some of the things that came to my mind while you were speaking is one of the books that I read when I was doing research for the OSSET Puberty Rights program that I made for girls, was that we looked at the origin of the word menstruation. And out of it, you get men or monthly, something that is monthly, measurement. So all sorts of measurement came from this human construct. You get the words like regal, regular, regulate, laws. You get words like royalty. All of these words, when you look at the Germanic origin of the word menstruation, arise out of this. So it was the female construction. I think that's what the Ifa story is faithfully delivering. It is the female's idea, regulation, being on a regular cycle that built civilization the way we know it. And for women not to know that, to feel like men did everything, which is an easy conception to pick up when you open any history book. You know, you don't feel like you're a contributor. You don't understand your significance on the planet. You don't see that what we practice today as civilization was born out of a female's way of knowing. Right? So you don't see it. And therefore you can't live up to it.
So you can't see, you can't be what you can't see. You can't be what you can't see. And so this program may touch some young women, middle, and our seniors. You just never know, because it's very, very, when we think about the media and what people are seeing on television, it's it may be hopeful. This program, Dr. Peace, I applaud you for doing it.
I applaud you for being here to share.
We want to share because, but it may actually have the beginning of giving someone the courage to begin to know themselves and love themselves better, and then as a result, everything else will flow from it much better.
But Marian, think about our charge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you stop and think about, we are custodians of the young.
Mm-hmm.
What an awesome responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You have been entrusted with the innocence, with the next generation. You have been given charge of this, of developing this, of protecting this, of nurturing this. That is a charge that is not taken lightly by the Most High.
That's right.
You know, this is not accidental. You know, it isn't just, oh, you just happen to be there, you know, and then a child came out of that relationship. Oh, no. Listen, to whom much is given,
Much is required.
much is required.
That's right.
If you are given children, the community has been given children, whether it has come from this womb or that womb, the community has children. What is happening to our children? We see that our children are in trouble. Our children are suffering. We are hemorrhaging children. We look at, you know, the abuse in the elevator. You can look at abuse on the street. Some man is standing here. You have busted him all the way down to selling cigarettes for a penny a piece on the street, and you cannot leave him alone.
Right.
You have to come and further.
Yes.
You know, it was not enough that you have reduced him to this level of peonage.
Right.
But you actually have to come and brutalize him to death.
That's right.
You know, what is this? We are, every parent who looks at these images has to be somewhat concerned about whether or not their son is going to come home.
That's right.
Whether or not their son is going to be assaulted because he's standing in front of a salon waiting to go in and get a haircut.
That's right.
Because, you know, that you don't need to have a reason to abuse black people, because black people are objects, and if you are frustrated with the economy, if you are frustrated with whatever it is you are not pleased with, you can take out your anger on these people because you have silenced them. There's a lot at stake for them if they call you out and call you by name.
Right.
I don't want to take the last few minutes. I just want to be sure that we get everything in that we can in 1 hour.
You know, one of the things I would like to just say in closing is that a piece of advice that I would give to every young woman and girl, you know, growing up and listening to our voices this evening is that wait and involve the advice of your family, trusted family members, aunts, sisters, cousins, when you're going into relationships. Do not just go in on infatuation basis. You need wisdom to look and look for signs that say this may not be good. And sometimes when you're so in love, you're so infatuated, you can't see that. And there's not a way to really protect you once you're in there and you're alone in an elevator, or you're alone in an apartment, or you're alone in some other place. The time to correct the problem is at the outset.
Preventive.
Yes. So, wait, don't rush in. Involve other, older, wiser women in your family or in your network,
Right.
in your decision making.
Right.
Marian.
And my advice is to the young women, believe it or not, is to be careful when the man is calling you all the time, giving you all the flowers, at your house all the time, at your job all the time, that to some extent the person may think, oh, this is a really, really good boyfriend. But that's also a sign as well. When you have a man who is very possessive / jealous, even though there's a difference between possessiveness and being jealous, that many times those men manifest that power and control that leads to a domestic violence situation. So people have to always remember that it is about power and control, and that the person is believing that the other person is either going to be silent or is going to be silenced, and so that person will not have to pay a penalty. But you do want to be careful when it's a whole lot of flowers and it's calling, calling, calling. It's actually kind of checking in on you, because another part of love is that it is supposed to, and like in friendship, is that supposed to make you feel happy, but also an element of freedom, because you are carrying that love with you, so you don't have to have it with you 365 days. But we know that the domestic violence happens quite a bit with our teens. And so when we talk about the dating violence, my advice is, please be careful, teenage girls. We love you, all of you, and that first guy who approaches you and calls you and everything, we don't want to be the ones to put the water on the relationship. Oh, here comes auntie and big mama and big sister. That we're saying this out of love and respect, and we would like for you to cultivate that spirit of discernment, so that, as you say, the girl doesn't put herself in the troubled way. And for the young man, we also want to look at some mechanisms, some ways that we are seeing that we are cultivating this, and to stop it. We're encouraging, believe it or not, to try to stop spanking all of the children, the boys and the girls. The new modern way is, it takes a little bit longer, but to talk. So not to bring violence into the home at all, because so much violence is learned at the footstool of the dad and the mom, or there's so many step families or things like that. So we don't want to bring any violence into the home. And we have found, there's been studies, believe it or not, that spanking, especially without any explanation, many of the old school moms and dads, there was some explanation, but just a spanking of a young child without an explanation just causes many times the child to be fearful, and many times to be angry, and then that anger manifests itself much later.
We want to see that nonviolence is practiced in
the
all
home.
realms.
Correct.
We want nonviolent law enforcement.
Yes.
We want nonviolent discipline in the home. We want nonviolent relationships. We just go for nonviolent